Senator Marco Rubio introduces a bill protecting religious organizations from the unconstitutional sledgehammer that is Obamacare. I'm Matt Barber, Vice President of Liberty Council Action, and joining me in studio today is Ron Miller, Associate Dean with Liberty University's Helms School of Government. Ron, we talked yesterday, and people around the country are talking about the fact that President Obama, using his Obamacare foray into socialized government-controlled medicine, the Department of Health and Human Services issued a dictate that all Christian Catholic organizations will comply with the requirement that they provide health care services, including sterilization, including abortifacients like RU-486 and other abortion-inducing drugs. And this, it's, as we talked about yesterday, one of the most egregious unconstitutional acts that I've ever seen, certainly ever imagined, for coming from a president. Yet this president has done it. Well, the good news is that U.S. Senator Marco Rubio of Florida has introduced a bill called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 2012 that would expand the nearly non-existent exemptions for religious employers in the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, otherwise known as Obamacare. As it now stands, and as previously mentioned, the Department of HHS is forcing religious employers to pay for contraceptives, sterilization services, and abortion-inducing drugs for their employees. Good for Marco Rubio, and shame on President Barack Obama.
I wonder how many people out there who were just taken in by the idea that they could get free health care. And, of course, we know nothing's free. There is always a cost. But I wonder how many of those people actually thought the cost would not just be a monetary cost, but a cost to some of the truths that supposedly at one time in our country we held as to be self-evident.
Yes.
But obviously it hasn't been self-evident to those in this administration, because they have taken at every turn an opportunity to try and use this law to infringe upon individual choice, and at the same time to force organizations to go against their religious principles.
Well, as we were talking about earlier today, I think it was Karl Marx that has essentially said, and I'm paraphrasing here, the first thing in order to get control of the people is to get control of their health care. Once you control the health care, the rest of it falls into place. That's what this secular socialist president is doing. He's employing the tactics of Karl Marx. Our friend Michelle Bachmann, Minnesota congresswoman and former presidential candidate, has called Obamacare the crown jewel of socialism. And I happen to agree with Karl Marx on this. If you are able to control the most minute aspects of a person's life, their very health, then they are completely dependent upon the government for everything else. It just falls into place. Well, that control clearly reaches beyond the individual here, and anybody who would have a dissent or have a problem with aspects of Obamacare, we know, for instance, that it does set up federally funded health care. They've tried to say that it doesn't, but through various straw man procedures, it provides abortion funding, and you and I pay for it. This is just another attempt for them to, now they've got control, they have what they can do affirmatively, now they have to shut down and force those who disagree to comply. That's what the Department of Health and Human Services has said has done here. They've graciously offered 1 year for the church to comply. Well, as we talked about yesterday, the Catholic Church has said we will not comply, and other Protestant and Christian organizations are getting behind the Catholic Church. So essentially, Barack Obama has set up a situation where the government is now at war with Christianity.
And I think it was inevitable, given the direction they were taking things. It was quite clear that through all of the nuanced words that were spoken about this, that he was eventually going to bring it to this confrontation. I'm pleased to see that we're up to the challenge, and I'm hoping that the people out there in everyday life will realize that they need to get behind their houses of worship, and they need to support this, because this has implications that go far beyond just Obamacare.
Well, back to the Senator Marco Rubio's bill that he has introduced, the the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 2012. He said this, quote, "This is a common sense bill that simply says the government can't force religious organizations to abandon the fundamental tenets of their faith because the government says so." And if people would like to see the text of this legislation, you can go to Liberty Counsel's website, lc.org. Click on it, and you can read the whole bill for yourself. But this is fantastic. I was glad to see that Marco Rubio, who has conservatives across the country excited as a young, really, I think, a future superstar in the conservative movement, that he was the first out of the chute to, from a congressional standpoint, to fire back against Barack Obama here and say, nope, we're going to, this is a gross overreach, unconstitutional overreach. We're going to ensure that you don't get away with this.
I hope that when we look back on the year 2012, when you take actions like this, when you take the Supreme Court decision, which said that churches had ministerial exceptions and could actually make decisions about who they hire, when you look at the court rulings against attempts to try and restrict people who want to provide information to folks who are seeking an abortion, you take all of those together, you hope that when we look back on 2012, this will be the year that we confronted this monstrosity, this attempt to suppress freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, and that we beat it back. And I'm hoping it'll be a year of great pride for Americans in how they defended those things that, again, should have been self-evident. I look at the name of the bill, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Yeah. Why are we in a position in the United States of America where it has to be restored?
Religious freedom has to be restored. And I'll tell you why. I hope I can illustrate this effectively. On the one side, you have what we have here are two competing worldviews. On the one hand, you have a worldview, the Judeo-Christian worldview, with the framework of which our nation was founded. Clearly, the founders were operating from that worldview. From that worldview blossomed and grew the greatest constitutional republic in the history of mankind. On the other side, you have the secular socialist worldview. That is the worldview. It is a postmodern worldview. It is a worldview adopted by President Barack Obama and many controlling the reins of government right now. Between those two worldviews is the Constitution. The United States Constitution was created to work and operate within the framework of the Judeo-Christian worldview. The Constitution is an encumbrance. It is a hurdle to the goals of those who embrace a secular socialist worldview. They have to either circumvent and go around the Constitution to impose their dictates, as we see here with this arbitrary overreach by President Obama and the Department of Health and Human Services, or they have to just trample right over it, which I think is probably the better illustration here of what this president has done. This shows us again, Ron, that elections have consequences. Elections matter. Look to those who are running for political office and see which worldview they're operating from. Do a little research. If they're operating from the Judeo-Christian worldview within which the framework within which our nation was founded and our Constitution grew, or are they operating from this secular socialist worldview that views the Constitution as something that they need to get around? Why do you think they call it a living, breathing document that is malleable and can change with the times? Well, because it certainly is convenient if you want to do something unconstitutional to say the Constitution doesn't really matter.
Right.
Your thoughts?
And what I would encourage people to do is understand that these worldviews are incompatible. There is no compromise. There is no way to meld them together. No. They exist in opposition to one another.
They're polar opposites.
They are polar opposites. They cannot be brought together. And therefore, we have to choose. And when we make that choice, we have to stand with that choice. I know it's hard, but the only way that worldview will prevail is if we stand up and we speak out.
Very well said. Well, folks, this is why we call it a culture war. We are at war. President Obama said the culture war is so 90s, yet President Obama has added gas to the flames of the culture war like no man before. And we hope that you will join us at Liberty Counsel in making the right decisions and looking to candidates who embrace the Judeo-Christian worldview, because elections really do matter. Go to lc.org to find out how you can become part of Liberty Counsel's team, or give us a call at 1-800-671-1776. Join Liberty Counsel today.